I think that's right. It'll be a fairly precise targeting. It'll be something, though, and it will be pretty painful for Iran, and it will teach the Iranians that if they continue with this strategy, it will lead to an all-out war, and an all-out war will be a catastrophe for the Iranian leadership, who are not supported by the vast majority of the Iranian people, and it's very important to remember that. So, I mean, Netanyahu and the Israelis have the upper hand in this situation.
Aside from all the trauma in Israel, of course, the people that are suffering most at the moment are all those in Lebanon, especially southern Lebanon. Now, that's because of the behaviour and the installations and the terrorism perpetrated by Hezbollah, funded and directed by Iran. But explain to us about the Lebanese government. What role does it play? What autonomy does it have? Or is it a puppet of Iran and Hezbollah too?
Well, it just doesn't have the authority and the power to take control of that area between the Litani River in the south of Lebanon and the border. You know, under the Security Council Resolution 1701, that area is supposed to be cleared of any military other than the Lebanese military, and what's called UNIFIL, the United Nations Force in Lebanon. Well, UNIFIL has just gone missing altogether. And over the last few years, Hezbollah has been able to rebuild their military capacity in that area, totally contrary to Security Council resolution. And they've been firing rockets indiscriminately into Israel and into Israeli cities. So in the end, I mean, no Prime Minister of Israel can ignore that, has to deal with it. The UN won't deal with it. So he has to deal with it himself. And the Israeli Defence Force is just doing that.
Yeah, it's the only way they can defend themselves. So let's just talk about some of the Australian reaction here. I showed this comment from Anthony Albanese yesterday to show how pathetic he is in action against the terror groups or in support of Israel.
Well, we regard Hezbollah as a terrorist organisation. As we regard Hamas as a terrorist organisation, we have been working with like-minded countries and issuing appropriate statements such as the ones that I referred to.
I mean, issuing appropriate statements, all the sort of talking points there. No strong-willed defence of Israel and support for it to get rid of these terror groups. And today, the Deputy Prime Minister, Richard Marles, has again joined calls for a ceasefire. Have a listen to that.
We are not about to deny countries' rights to defend themselves. That said, we have added our voice to an international call led by the United States for a 21-day ceasefire, and we continue to do that.
A 21-day ceasefire. The UN is again calling for this, Alexander Downer. But of course, with Hezbollah, with so many weapons embedded in southern Lebanon, all a ceasefire would do would protect Hezbollah and those weapons. It doesn't help Israel defend itself at all.
No, a ceasefire is absolutely out of the question, and these calls for a ceasefire are a little short of pathetic. I mean, the Israeli government will, of course, not take any notice of these cries for a ceasefire, which will be entirely to the advantage of Hezbollah. When Hezbollah are on the back foot, now's the time to crush them. Apparently not. Now's the time to give them a break, give them 21, I'm not sure why it's 21 days, but 21 days to rebuild themselves and consolidate their position so that they'll be well placed to fire more rockets and missiles into Israel. I mean, it's absolutely out of the question. I make this point about the Australian government. Nobody in the world is listening to Australia anymore. Australia has played itself out of this issue completely. It has no soft power and its statements have no meaning because they're not helpful to Israel. They're not helpful to dealing with this problem of Islamic terrorism, which is trying to destroy Israel. And so bearing that in mind, and bearing in mind everybody knows that Labor's position is entirely driven by domestic politics, people will just ignore them, and they are ignoring them. They're also, importantly, because that's not very important in the great sweep of things, even if it is to us as Australians, but more importantly, they're ignoring Joe Biden as well, who's lost all leverage with Netanyahu now. I mean, Israel has to defend itself and destroy these terrorist organisations which are backed by Iran. And if it leads to war with Iran, well, so be it. But in the end, if it comes to de-escalation and ceasefires, let's hear the Iranians agree to a ceasefire. Let's hear the Iranians agree to de-escalation. Let's put the pressure on Iran instead of continually putting pressure on Israel in order to appease Islamic minorities in our own countries.
Yeah, spot on, Alexander Downer. Thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it.